try to take money out of my family's emo. So now y'all believe me? I've been literally saying this for 5 years. I'm about to break it down for you.
5 long years of getting brushed off? 5 years of people acting like he didn't matter? This wasn't just some random rant. This was a man collecting on every ounce the culture owed him. And it got real personal real quick. The energy wasn't calm, it wasn't measured, it was built-up pressure finally exploding in front of everybody.
The justice system does not ground. When I mean the justice system, I mean the Department of Justice, which is United States America versus whatever your last name is, right?
And right in the middle of all that chaos, Gucci Mane, what? Then boom, 6ix9ine found inside. That detail flipped everything upside down. The track had the internet going wild, no warning, no slow build, just instant madness. April 10th, 2026, a live stream turns into a full-blown moment, clips flooding every platform like crazy.
I try to take money out of my family's emo. Family's wealth.
When I did my video with Gucci Mane, I went to Atlanta and I met Gucci Mane for the first time. And we did our song, we did the video.
After years of being told to sit down and stay quiet, this man steps up in front of the entire rap game and drops 4 heavy words. Now you believe me. That hit different, no doubt. For 5 straight years, Tekashi 6ix9ine carried a label the culture stamped on him and refused to erase. The man who cooperated, the man who testified, the one sitting in that federal courtroom naming names while everyone stared him down. That snitch tag, it stuck to him like glue everywhere he went, no escape. Online, offline, headlines, comments, conversations, it didn't matter. That label became his limit and his starting point at the same time. No matter how loud he got, how many tracks he dropped, or what he tried to prove, people already made up their minds, and they were not changing it. But then April 10th, 2026 hits, and everything flips. Gucci Mane, a man who spent over 20 years building his name, his reputation, his whole image, steps in and drops a track called Crash Dummy, and the internet instantly loses control. This isn't just another release. This is someone known for standing on a strict code suddenly shaking the table, and people noticed fast.
What happened? Remember 6ix9ine situation? Y'all remember the 6ix9ine situation? When y'all say, it's the streets, you know what you signed? Now you a businessman? How many excuses? How many times? No, it's different.
The moment clips of 6ix9ine reacting to that track touched the timeline, it was over. The reaction wasn't slow, it wasn't building, it exploded right away. TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube reaction pages, Facebook, every corner of the internet started pushing those clips like wildfire. Within hours of April 10th rolling into the 11th, the entire hip-hop space was locked into one heated debate. Street code, snitching, and how people pick and choose when it matters. In those few seconds, they took over everything. 6 seconds. That's all it took to become the sound everybody was replaying, reacting to, and arguing about all week long. It was loud, messy, and impossible to ignore. But before jumping into the full chaos of what 6ix9ine said during that stream, before breaking down every point he threw out and every claim he made, we've got to rewind for a second, because none of this came out of nowhere. You've got to understand what Crash Dummy really is, why it even exists, and what went down on January 10th, 2026 that set all of this in motion. Gucci Mane isn't just any artist. He's one of the key figures behind trap music, the force behind 17 Records, a label that helped shape careers and push some of the biggest Southern hip-hop names into the spotlight over the last 15 years. Calling Gucci Mane an institution isn't exaggeration. It's just the truth. His name carries weight, history, and a reputation that's been locked into the culture for years. Then that old clip pops up, and it hits different this time. Pulled straight from past footage and played during 6ix9ine's stream like it was courtroom evidence. You hear Gucci Mane in his own voice, clear as day, saying what he stands on. I know.
So now y'all believe me? I've been literally saying this 5 years. I'm about to break it down for you.
Rumor that's him on camera saying it himself. So now everybody's watching this, hearing Gucci Mane lay it out. No cooperation, no talking, no working with law enforcement under any situation. That was the code he claimed, the line he drew, and he said it loud for years. That wasn't hidden, that wasn't unclear, it was public and repeated. Then 6ix9ine steps in and drops a quick 5-word reaction to that clip, and somehow that short response says everything people were already thinking, because something clearly changed between that moment and April 2026. And people started connecting dots fast. Now bring in January 10th, 2026. A studio situation in Dallas, Texas that turned into something way bigger than a simple meeting. What was supposed to be business between Gucci Mane and his 1017 artist Pooh Shiesty suddenly became part of a much larger story. Add in a federal case involving multiple names, and now the conversation isn't quiet anymore. It's loud, messy, and full of questions people can't ignore. Born Trell Williams Jr., Pooh Shiesty had already done federal time on a gun case, came home, and wasted no time getting back to it. The music dropped, the energy was still there, and people quickly saw he hadn't missed a step at all. He was moving, recording, and building what looked like a strong comeback story, the kind the culture usually supports and celebrates. But behind the scenes, things weren't lining up the same way. He reportedly wanted out of his deal with Gucci Mane's label, and according to federal prosecutors, the way that situation was handled wasn't through talks, lawyers, or clean negotiations. It went in a completely different direction, and that's where things start getting serious. Prosecutors allege that what happened inside that Dallas studio wasn't just business gone wrong, it turned into something far more intense. They claim Pooh Shiesty, along with his father, fellow artist Big 30, and several others, walked into what Gucci believed was a normal meeting, and then flipped it into an armed situation. According to the allegations, once everyone was inside, a weapon was brought out. Pressure went up instantly, and documents were forced to be signed to break that contract.
Gucci Mane, whether he's telling or his cameraman is telling, right? You know what the feds do?
That's not a small claim. That's a major accusation being laid out. And it didn't stop there. Authorities say jewelry, watches, and cash were taken during the incident. One person was reportedly choked, and the door was blocked so nobody could leave until everything was done. The case itself, packed with details, studio footage, phone data, ankle monitor tracking from his prior case, fingerprints, and even social media posts where items connected to the situation were allegedly shown off afterward. This wasn't some random rumor bouncing around online. This was official. A federal criminal complaint, backed with real physical and digital evidence, dropped on April 1st, 2026, and it hit hard. Pooh Shiesty, his father, Big 30, and several others were all named, all facing serious federal kidnapping and conspiracy charges. 8 out of the 9 people involved were picked up across different cities: Dallas, Memphis, Nashville. It was a wide sweep, and it showed how big this situation really was. Then it got even louder when the United States attorney stepped up and held a full press conference, announcing federal kidnapping charges against multiple recording artists at the same time. That's not normal. That's major attention on the case. And some of the co-defendants didn't even get bond, meaning they stayed locked up as this case started moving forward. Pooh Shiesty remained in federal custody in Dallas, while Gucci Mane, who was mentioned in court documents as someone who identified Shiesty, came out publicly saying he wasn't cooperating or planning to testify. At the same time, reports from an FBI agent suggested they hadn't actually spoken to him directly, which only added more confusion to the situation. Then just 9 days after those arrests, Gucci Mane steps into the studio and records Crash Dummy. Produced by Zaytoven, his longtime collaborator, and a key figure behind some of Atlanta's most iconic sounds, the track didn't feel random at all. From the first line to the last, it clearly pointed back to that Dallas studio situation, without directly naming names, but still making people connect the dots fast. Gucci Mane came on that track telling his side like it was straight from his own experience. He talked about walking into what he thought was a regular business meeting, only to feel like he got set up. He made it clear. He believed people took his kindness and flipped it against him. Then he started throwing labels, calling the people involved crash dummies. And that word stuck heavy. One of the biggest lines everybody kept replaying, when he pointed out that the same person accused of robbing him was technically still signed to his label. Why? Because documents signed under pressure, especially under a threat, don't count as a real legal contract release. That detail had people talking nonstop. The internet didn't wait to react. It blew up instantly. On one side, Gucci's supporters were saying he didn't cooperate with law enforcement, he's not sitting in court, and making a song about something that happened to you isn't the same as working with prosecutors. That was their stance, loud and clear. But the critics? They weren't quiet at all. They argued that putting out a track describing an active federal case while people involved are still waiting for trial crosses a line. They started calling it dry snitching, saying it still gives information without officially testifying. And out of everyone watching this unfold, there was one person who had the perfect position to jump in and turn the volume all the way up. And he didn't stay quiet. He went live and let it fly.
8 of the 9 were arrested yesterday in Dallas, Memphis, and Nashville. These individuals who are charged and arrested include Williams Jr., also known as Pooh Shiesty.
That's 6ix9ine right there. That moment wasn't random. That was years of being told to sit down, stay quiet, and accept the label, all breaking through at once. Everything he held in finally came out, and now it's time to really look at what he said and what he actually meant. We're back on April 10th, 2026, the night that turned into one of the wildest and most talked about live streams hip-hop has seen in a long time. The energy was high, the audience was locked in, and everybody knew something big was about to happen. The stream was hosted by Aiden Ross, with N3 on there too, adding to the chaos and reactions in real time. And then you've got the main guest, Daniel Hernandez, better known as Tekashi 6ix9ine. The same name people kept saying they were done with, but somehow couldn't stop watching anyway. Every move, every word, it still pulled attention fast. To really understand how heavy this moment was, you've got to look at the full timeline, not just this one night. Go all the way back to 2018. 6ix9ine was just 22 years old, blowing up everywhere. The music was unavoidable, the image stood out instantly, and the spotlight was intense. But right behind that success was something serious. A federal RICO case that could have taken away years of his life if he decided to fight it all the way. That pressure, that situation, that decision, it all connects back to this exact moment on that live stream. He made the choice that changed everything. He cooperated with the government. He took the stand, testified against his co-defendants in the 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods case, named names, gave details, and walked out of federal custody way earlier than the time he was originally facing. That move didn't just make headlines, it flipped how the entire culture looked at him overnight. And the reaction? It was cold and consistent. One of the strongest public rejections of an artist in recent memory. He got blackballed. Features stopped coming in. Events didn't want to book him. And every time he tried to speak, people shut it down before he could even finish a sentence. It didn't matter what he said. The answer was already decided. He became the example people pointed to, the standard for what not to do. His name turned into a measuring stick for street credibility, a warning story, even a punchline in conversations that didn't used to involve him. But through all of that, 5 straight years, 6ix9ine kept circling back to one question, over and over again. What happens when this same situation hits someone else? What happens when the loudest voices pushing the code suddenly face pressure the code can't protect them from? What happens when federal attention lands on someone the culture actually respects? And on that live stream, he wasn't just reacting. He was calculated, intense, and ready. You could tell this wasn't off the cuff. This was something he had been building up, replaying in his head for years. And now, he flipped the whole narrative, aiming that same judgment right back at everyone who used it against him. He didn't just talk, he came prepared. 6ix9ine pulled up old footage of Gucci Mane talking about the code, played it back for everyone to hear, and then stacked it right next to everything that's happened since April 1st, 2026. The comparison wasn't subtle, it was direct, and it made people uncomfortable fast. Then he took it even further and said something that instantly split the audience. He argued straight up that race played a role in how people were reacting. He claimed Gucci was getting more understanding, more patience, more grace than he ever got. And that difference wasn't random. According to him, the culture doesn't apply the same rules to everyone, and it depends on who you are and how you look. That's not a light topic. That's heavy, and it hit comment sections everywhere at the same time. Some people agreed, others pushed back hard, and suddenly the conversation wasn't just about music anymore. It got deeper, more tense, and way more divided. But then the stream shifted again, and this part caught a lot of people off guard. Because one of the strongest points he made wasn't emotional, it wasn't even cultural, it was technical. He started breaking down how federal cases actually work, and you could tell this wasn't surface-level talk. This is someone who's been inside that system, sitting in a federal courtroom, staring at documents that literally say United States of America versus Daniel Hernandez, and understanding exactly what that means. The pressure, the power, the resources, all stacked against one person. That perspective gave his words a different kind of weight. He kept going, and this is where it got serious. 6ix9ine started explaining things in a way that even legal watchers said was basically on point. He broke down the difference between state charges and federal charges like he had studied it, lived it, and understood every layer of it. He talked about what it means when a federal grand jury subpoena shows up with your name on it. That's not something you ignore. That's real pressure from the highest level. Then he made it even clearer. There's no law, no amendment, nothing in the Constitution that protects any kind of street code. That doesn't exist in a courtroom. And if a federal judge orders you to testify and you refuse, that's not seen as loyalty. That's contempt, and it comes with real consequences. He wasn't just talking feelings. He was laying out how the system works. But here's the key part. His argument wasn't just calling Gucci Mane a bad person or attacking his character. That's not what he was doing. He was making a bigger point, that the federal system is a machine. It doesn't care about your reputation, your past, or what code you claim to follow. 20 years in the industry won't stop that machine once it starts moving. Then right when people thought they knew where it was going, the stream took a turn nobody expected. After all the clips, all the breakdowns, all the tension, 6ix9ine picked up a piece of paper and read a Bible verse out loud. That moment hit people in completely different ways. Some saw meaning in it, others didn't take it seriously at all. But one thing was clear. Once those clips got cut, posted, shared, screenshotted, and spread across every platform, it was already too late to slow it down. The grenade was already thrown, and now it was just waiting to land right in the middle of the rap world. Once that happened, there was no way people were staying quiet anymore. Everybody had something to say, and nobody was agreeing on anything. By the morning of April 11th, 2026, those clips were moving at a speed you only see a couple times a year in hip-hop culture. This wasn't just fans anymore. It was everybody watching. People who don't even follow rap were suddenly locked in. The coworker asking, "What is 6ix9ine?" The random relative trying to figure out what's going on. It spread that far. The algorithm grabbed those clips and pushed them everywhere. Every feed, every platform, nonstop. And under all that noise, all that arguing, all that confusion, there was one big question sitting there that nobody could answer cleanly. And when there's no clear answer, that's when things get loud. Opinions start flying from every direction, all at once, no filter, no pause. Everybody thinks they're right and nobody's backing down. Then out of all that noise, one voice cuts through sharp and clear. Freddie Gibbs! Known for being direct and not wasting words, he jumped on Instagram stories just hours after Crash Dummy dropped. And in classic Gibbs style, quick and precise, he delivered a reaction that hit instantly. It was short, it was sharp, and it stuck. The internet didn't just react, they turned what he said into something people kept repeating over and over again. Freddie Gibbs didn't hold back at all. He jumped on his story and basically said the whole situation had to be fake, like artificial intelligence level fake. Because in his mind, there was no way someone with Gucci Mane's status would drop a track describing a federal sit over a Zaytoven beat of all things and have it be real. It sounded too wild, too unbelievable. Then came his second post. And that's the one that really stuck. He said it so simple, so direct, that the internet grabbed it instantly and ran with it. A man had snitched on a Zaytoven beat. That line? It turned into a full-blown meme before the day even ended. And what made it even crazier? Gibbs and 6ix9ine were actually aligned on this one point. Two people who almost never agree, suddenly seeing the same angle. That alone became part of the bigger story unfolding in real time. Then DJ Academic stepped in and he took it even further. His angle was different, but the conclusion hit a similar nerve, and he didn't soften it at all. On stream, he argued that hip-hop as a whole actually owes 6ix9ine an apology. His reasoning was straight to the point. Back in 2018, when 6ix9ine cooperated with the government, the reaction was instant and brutal. No debate, no nuance. He was completely shut out, blackballed fast, and the decision was final. But now in 2026, Gucci Mane drops a track talking about details tied to an active federal case involving his own artist, and instead of that same immediate judgment, people slow down. Now it's debates. Different perspectives, careful takes. It's a completely different reaction, and that contrast had people talking heavy. Academics kept pushing his point and brought up something people tend to overlook. He reminded everyone that there was actual video evidence showing 6ix9ine himself had been kidnapped and robbed before he ever cooperated. That part isn't speculation, it's documented. And yet, when the culture decided how to label him, that detail kept getting ignored like it didn't matter. His argument was simple but hard to brush off. If you're applying a standard, it should be consistent. Picking and choosing when it counts makes the whole thing fall apart, and he made it clear he didn't think that could be defended logically at all. Then Wack 100 stepped in with a completely different take, and the debate got even more intense. He argued that Gucci Mane's situation isn't the same, not even close. According to him, everything tied to that Dallas situation was already documented before the song ever dropped. There was studio footage, phone records, ankle monitor data, all of it already in the hands of authorities. So in his view, Gucci wasn't giving prosecutors anything new by making that track.
off-duty officer. And I'm a retired police officer. That's what he said. I'm a retired police officer.
Let me read this shit for you. This is God. All who rage against you will surely be ashamed.
Whack 100's stance was that talking about something that happened to you in music is not the same as sitting down with the government and giving testimony. He framed it as an artist expressing what they went through, not assisting a case. And that's where the real debate sits. Is there actually a difference, legally or morally, between directly cooperating with prosecutors and putting details of an active case into a song? That question right there became one of the most serious and thought-provoking parts of this entire situation. There's no clean answer here, and that's exactly why the conversation wouldn't slow down. The more people tried to settle it, the more complicated it got. That gray area kept everybody talking, arguing, and picking sides without ever fully agreeing. Then Waka Flocka Flame stepped in and shifted the whole angle of the discussion. He brought up something that most people weren't even thinking about, and it changed the energy instantly. His comments started spreading fast because they added a whole new layer to the situation. Waka shared a personal experience from back when he worked closely with 6ix9ine. He talked about being introduced to someone on Gucci's security team, and at first, it just sounded like background detail, but then came the part that made people stop and really think. According to Waka, that security team included a retired police officer. Not just anybody, but someone with an actual law enforcement background, actively part of the environment during situations like this. And that changes things in a major way, because Waka's point wasn't random, it was very specific. When someone with a law enforcement background is present, active, retired, or even off-duty, they don't operate under street rules. They're tied to a completely different set of expectations and responsibilities. They can't just ignore what they see, and they can't be told to stay quiet if something serious happens. That's not how that works. So while people in the culture can go back and forth about what 6ix9ine should or shouldn't do, that person on the security team, they answer to a different system entirely. And in a federal system this serious, even one person with that kind of background being present can shift everything in ways most people didn't consider at first. That detail shifts everything. It changes what the government can access, what they can legally push for, and how fast they can start putting a case together, which, realistically, was already in motion. That's the part people weren't fully thinking about. Waka made it clear. He wasn't out here calling 6ix9ine a snitch. That wasn't his angle at all. What he was doing was pointing out the structure behind it all. When law enforcement is part of your regular circle, even in a security role, the idea that a street code can fully protect you from federal attention gets way more complicated. Then Rick Ross stepped in, and his tone was completely different from the chaos. While everyone else was loud and picking sides, Ross kept it calm, focused, and business-minded. He broke it down from a professional angle. If an artist wants out of a contract, there are actual ways to do that. Real processes, real systems, lawyers, renegotiations, buyouts, structured exits. That's how the industry handles these situations when things go left. Those options exist for a reason. Disputes between artists and labels happen all the time, and the business has built systems to deal with them properly. There's too much money and too much structure involved for things to be handled recklessly, and that's where his message hit hard. Walking into a studio with weapons and forcing signatures under pressure, that's not negotiation, that's something else entirely. And that line, it's one people couldn't ignore once he said it. That's not a misunderstanding, that's a crime. And choosing that path instead of handling things the right way doesn't just bring legal trouble, it can tear down everything you spent years building. Careers, reputations, relationships, it all starts collapsing fast once that line gets crossed. Then Boosie Badazz came in with a reaction that felt raw and real in a completely different way. This wasn't polished or calculated, this was him taking it in live, right there in the moment. You could see it on his face, hear it in his voice. He was processing it as it hit him. And that reaction carried weight because of who he is. This is someone who's dealt with the federal system before. He understands what those charges mean on a deeper level. Watching him respond felt less like commentary and more like someone trying to process something heavy in real time. He kept repeating the same words over and over, and each time it landed harder than the last. You could feel the realization setting in more with every second, because this wasn't gossip and it wasn't rumors flying around online. This was official. The United States Attorney for the Northern District of Texas standing in front of cameras announcing federal kidnapping charges. 9 people, 3 different cities. That's serious. This is real life at the highest level, and the people in the culture who truly understand what that looks like, They felt the weight of it immediately. Honeycomb Brazy's comment cut straight to something deeper, what a lot of people saw as the real loss in all of this. Not just the legal side, not even the street code debates, but the wasted potential sitting underneath all the drama. Because when you look at Pooh Shiesty's story before this, it wasn't failure, it was the opposite. He was getting attention, living the lifestyle people chase. Cars, shows, momentum. He had it all lined up. This was a comeback story the culture usually celebrates loud. He did his time, came home, and proved he still had it. Built everything back up from zero, step by step, putting himself right back in position. That kind of run doesn't happen easily, and people recognized it. But then, according to many voices speaking on this situation, something shifted. Pride, decisions, pressure, whatever you want to call it, walked in and changed everything fast. As of April 11th, 2026, Pooh was still in federal custody, with bond denied. That's not a small situation. That's serious, ongoing, and not going away anytime soon. And then comes the part that sounds almost unreal. Despite everything that allegedly happened, he was still technically signed to Gucci Mane's 1017 Records. The same contract he reportedly tried to get out of through that situation, it wasn't voided. The signatures that were allegedly forced didn't legally break the deal. So in the middle of all this chaos, that agreement was still standing like nothing ever changed. And that detail had people shocked. The situation ended in a way nobody expected. An alleged attempt to break free from a record deal turns into federal kidnapping charges. And at the same time, the artist is still locked into that same deal. That's not an opinion. That's just how it played out. As of April 11th, 2026, Gucci Mane hasn't responded to 6ix9ine's rant at all. No public statement, no direct reply, no addressing the accusations about the code. He hasn't spoken on the viral clips, hasn't reacted to the debates, nothing. And that silence, it's loud in its own way. Whether it's a calculated move, a matter of principle, or something else entirely, only he knows. But when there's no response, the internet doesn't wait. It fills that gap fast. People started forming their own conclusions, picking sides, building narratives, and pushing their own versions of the truth. And all of that noise circles back to one person, the one who lit the match in the first place. Not Gucci Mane, not Pooh Shiesty, not even what happened in that Dallas studio. It all loops back to 6ix9ine, the same figure who's been on the outside of the industry for years, watching, waiting, and calling things out. The rainbow hair, the tattoos, the controversy, everything people recognize instantly. And his main point, it cuts deeper than just this moment. He's been saying the same thing over and over. The code people talk about isn't always real like they claim. It's not just a principle. Sometimes it looks more like a performance, and that's where the conversation really starts to shift. Because once you strip away the names, the headlines, and all the noise, what's left is a bigger question that doesn't just apply to one city, it applies to the entire culture. If the rules can change depending on who's involved, then are they really rules at all? Or are they just expectations that move when it's convenient? That's the tension people couldn't shake as this kept unfolding. 6ix9ine didn't just throw out accusations, he forced people to look at patterns. Who gets forgiven, who gets criticized, and who gets completely shut out. Those differences don't go unnoticed, especially when everything is happening this publicly. At the same time, not everyone sees it the same way. Some people still stand firm, saying there's a clear line between telling your story and officially cooperating. Others aren't buying that separation at all, saying once details hit the public, the impact is already there. And that split is not going away anytime soon. If anything, moments like this make it even wider, because now every future situation is going to be compared back to this one. Every artist, every case, every decision, it's all going to run through the same conversation again. And whether people admit it or not, what happened here didn't just create a viral moment, it set a new reference point. One that's going to keep coming up every time the culture starts debating what's real, what's allowed, and who gets treated differently when it matters most. And when it finally becomes your turn, when your name is the one printed on that paperwork, and it's the United States of America sitting across from you, you're going to find out real fast what that code actually means. And for a lot of people, it doesn't hit the way they thought it would. Because 6ix9ine's argument this whole time hasn't been that the code is completely wrong. That's not what he's been saying. His point is that the code isn't applied evenly. It shifts. It bends depending on who you are, how popular you are, and where you stand in the culture. And whether people agree with him or not, and a lot of the rap world doesn't, April 2026 gave that argument something it never really had before. Real situations, real timelines, real receipts that people can point to and debate over. And this situation, it's not finished. The legal case involving Pooh Shiesty, Big 30, and others is still ongoing. New reactions keep dropping every hour, every platform, non-stop. The clips, the memes, the breakdowns, it just keeps building. But underneath all of that noise, something bigger is being asked. Through every Exhibit A, every reaction, every Zaytoven beat and viral moment, hip-hop is facing a question it can't easily answer. What does the code really mean? Who does it actually protect? And is it even a real code? Or just a story people keep repeating? If you've been following this breakdown, make sure you hit subscribe, drop a like, and share this with someone who needs to hear it, because this conversation is far from over.